Okay, for this video I'm going to have a look at what's known by most people as the torque to IQ or injection quantity conversion map. You don't find this in edc16 maps because they're not torque based, or edc15 files because they're not torque based. They are based on injection quantity all through, but the edc16s are torque based, so you need a torque to IQ converter at some point. I'm going to talk about this one now simply because here's the lambda maps that I last talked about when I was talking about the files on this particular ECU, and very close by, in fact virtually next door to it, there is this map. And there is a fairly good chance that this is the torque to IQ conversion map. So I'm just going to double click that and get it to open and have a look. Now this is probably revs per minute as usual, so it's probably engine speed, so I'll just put in there engine speed and revs per minute, and I'll say OK for now. Then let's go back and have a look. Now the thing that's being used in several of the files is torque, which tends to suggest that this will be torque with an output of injection quantity. So this would seem to be torque. If it is, then it's running up to 336 there rather than 3360. So we probably want to make that 0.1. That gives us our 336. As I said, that is most likely torque as measured in Newton meters, so that's okay for that part. Let's have a look at what we've got left. Now this would appear to be an injection quantity, or IQ. Assuming that it is, if I put as a title for the map torque to injection quantity conversion, something like that, and the description is, well, it will be injection quantity. I'm just using IQ. I'm assuming that what we'll get is a figure in milligrams per stroke, and for that we normally use 0.01, which would seem a reasonable guess, and I'll go for one place after the decimal point. That's usually good enough for this sort of thing, so I'll say OK. Let's just stretch that out a little bit, move that over a little bit so we can have a good look at the figures, see if we think they're reasonable. Right, so it looks as if it's allowing us to have a conversion. Remember, this isn't a limiter of any sort, it's simply a conversion, so it will convert up to there, I think 72, 60, 64, so these are the sorts of figures it will convert up to. The fact that they are those figures is immaterial. It doesn't have anything to do with the previous limiters. It just means that the ECU can look at a torque value, and it can then use this map to work out what injection quantity that should relate to. So in other words, if we pick, let's pick 3000 revs per minute. If we go across and look at 3000 revs per minute at 204 for the torque, so roughly 200 Newton meters, that equates to somewhere around about 31 milligrams per stroke being injected. If we want the same torque but we want more revs per minute, then we have to inject a little bit more fuel. But whereas lots of the maps that we look at, especially for tuning purposes, are limiting in some way, this one simply is a conversion. So it will just give us a value in one form and change it into the same value but in a different form. So we just go from torque to injection quantity. Right, that's probably all you need to know. You just need to know that there will always be one of these in the edc16 ECU files because they are based on torque rather than injection quantity, so there must be a conversion map somewhere in the file to allow for conversion. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning, if I just get that out of the way, Windows has found this one, and it probably found it because if I go to text view, there we've got 15, 16, so it's found those 2 pointers for the axes, and so that probably helped it find it. Now quite often in these files there are other groups that look just like this. Now occasionally they are functional and quite often they are not functional, so it's quite possible that if we scroll further through this file we will find other groups that look just like this one looks. So it may not always be that you can find this as easy as I just did by finding it right next to the lambda calculation maps. Sometimes you may have to have a search for it, and sometimes there may be more than one to choose from. But generally speaking, you find that the other versions of this, and there are often several, so you have little peaks here like that to match that, but the other versions very often do not have those axes guides to how big the axis is. So in other words, what we saw there with the 15 and 16 may well not be present. Numbers might be present, but that may not well be present, in which case very often those are not functioning, so they're just other versions of this that don't function. So I just point that out just in case you're struggling on a different file and either can't find this, or you're finding more than one and you don't know which one you should be looking at. Occasionally there is more than one of these and they both appear to be functioning, in which case that is the situation. There may well be more than one functioning in the file. There can be reasons for that, and I won't go into that at the moment. Right, I'll leave that one there.